no, earlier to this, we had two more invited delivered by Professor Christine Finner and from US. And the second invited lecture was delivered by Professor Vinay Kumar Srivastava. And today, Professor K.K. Misra, former Vice Chancellor of uh, Utkal University of Culture, is the moderator. And we have 8 actually panelists. But unfortunately, Professor Vinay Kumar Srivastava suddenly got ill and he is not in a good shape and he is not joining us. So that's a big loss for this symposium. And today we have with us Professor R.K. Mutatkar, Professor P.C. Joshi, Professor S. Gregory, Professor Shalini Mehta, Professor A.B. Otta, Professor Arbind Sinha. I am the last one. And with this brief introduction, and this is probably the first major academic event after the registration of the forum. And thanks to Professor Otta, he did a splendid job. And now,
Can't hear, sir, anything.
and let us give a clap to Professor. He has done a splendid job. Now, this is the registered forum. Registration process was completed on 18th of November. And with this, I hand over the platform, Google Meet platform, to Professor Misra, the moderator of this symposium. Professor Misra, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Behera. Good evening to all of you. Good afternoon from those who are joining from Europe, and good morning to those who are joining from United States. This is the third major event, as Professor Behera pointed out. The first was by Christine Finnan. The second was our colleague, Professor Vinay Srivastava. And this is the third major event. Professor Behera pointed out that the theme of this panel discussion is very contemporary and urgent. But then I think that the question of crisis in anthropology is very, very recurrent. Many of you might have seen the Malinowski's book, Argonauts of the Western Pacific. In the preface itself, he writes that anthropology is in crisis. That was way back in 1922. In 1922, Malinowski perceived that there is something wrong. And then he said that anthropology is sadly ludicrous, not to say it is in a tragic position. Emphasis is given here on the tragic position of anthropology. And he says that there is a problem of objects, there is a problem of methods, and so on and so forth. And in almost regular intervals, many anthropologists have pointed out the same problem in anthropology. I'll take you back to Levi-Strauss. In 1950s, he said, anthropology is very soon going to be doomed. It is very soon going to be doomed to become a discipline without an object. Similarly, in 1995, Shalini said that anthropology has already reached the twilight of its career, unquote. George Marcus, who started a new revolution in the name of postmodernism, he said that anthropology is dying and we have to save anthropology. Bruce Cafferer, in 2000, he said that anthropology has not only watered down, but has lost its criticality. Clifford Geertz, of course, in 1990s, had expressed his concern by saying that 50 years from now, he had written in 1991, 50 years from now, anthropology departments would be doing different and looking different. So these kinds of concerns have been expressed all over the world, not only in India. But here in our country, we are facing a real crisis situation. For some reason or the other, anthropology is not taking off in this country. It didn't have a good beginning also. All of us know that in 1920s, it had a modest beginning. but then the beginning was also not very bright, very good. And now we are facing a real crisis situation. But then I always believe that wherever there is a crisis, there is an opportunity. So I think this panel discussion with 7 very distinguished anthropologists, those who are having at least 4 decades of experience in the field of anthropology teaching and or research, probably would throw some light. And I think this would be a wonderful contribution to the posterity as to what we are thinking. All of us have put on at least 4 decades of experience, so we know the ins and outs of our own discipline. And if it is in crisis, then how to solve it. If it is not in crisis, then probably how to make the discipline accessible to more people, to more scholars, and to more, government machinery for the purpose of development and all. I don't have to talk about the panelists. Whenever their turn comes, I'll just give a brief introduction about them, maybe a few seconds, because all of them are so distinguished, they need no introduction. The senior most among all the panelists is probably Professor Mutatkar. I think we should start from Professor Mutatkar. And before we start from Professor Mutatkar, we should all wish our friend Vinay Srivastava the best. He has some health issues. I hope he recovers very soon. I, on everybody's behalf, wish him a very speedy recovery. Professor Mutatkar was the first head of the Department of Anthropology and first professor director of Interdisciplinary School of Health Sciences, Savitribai Phule University at Pune. It was earlier known as Pune University. And he was the founder of the Maharashtra Association of Anthropological Sciences in 1976. And his major contribution is to the field of medical anthropology. Of course, he has worked in other areas as well. And he is the first panelist today. We are looking forward to listening to him for about 12-13 minutes about the theme, that is crisis in anthropology and the way forward. Now I hand over the platform to Professor R.K. Mutatkar.
Thank you, Professor Misra. Honorable members of the registered forum, this session of introspection and brainstorming in the positive spirit, providing examples in the presentations, are not meant as assessment of any institution or scholar. Forum has emerged as a positive step in response to a crisis about a proposed event in 23. INCA had emerged in response to a crisis in Science Congress, marginalizing anthropology. INCA, following the model of yearly Congress, led to positive contribution of knowledge creation by way of books. Are these books referred to literature review or are listed in our syllabus? The pioneer anthropologists, as Professor Misra said, discussed the issues of identity of anthropology as per their perspectives and experience. George Foster said that the teachers like Herskovits, Kroeber, Lowy consciously kept the students away from applications. Malinowski advocated practical anthropology. Redfield brought in peasant culture, trade literature tradition in the context of Indian civilization. What is the popular image of anthropology in India? Is it considered as legacy of colonialism, since it was a compulsory subject at the ICS and subsequently dropped from ICS and again reintroduced as an optional subject due to efforts of Professor L.P. Vidyarthi? Anthropology is not perceived as capable of providing solutions to the concerns of the people or address the development vision articulated during freedom movement. The ethnographic accounts written by scholarly civil servants during British rule was not basic anthropology, but the training manuals for the succeeding civil servants. Ween's proclamation after 1857 had assured the Indian people non-interference in the cultural traditions. These ethnic group customs had to be documented, so it was applied anthropology for them. Iravati Karve's anthropological analysis of Mahabharata Yugantha by way of presentation of personalities earned her the highest national literary award. Was Deccan College classical anthropology or ethnology with organic relationship with ancient Indian culture, archaeology and linguistics? Why is there E in IUAES? What does it convey? Anthropological Society presented alternative voices in anthropology by way of analyzing Vivekananda, Tagore, Gandhi, Bankim Chandra, Ambedkar, Jyotiba Phule as Golden Jubilee lectures. I spoke on Gandhi, who went native in lifestyle to identify with the common man. This was anthropology as knowledge discipline. Do we discuss this in the classroom or at the PhD? After independence, we were to study ourselves, not others or on the islands. Tribal fieldwork was designed as studying others with an alibi to develop objectivity or simple to complex as in biology. When a Bean tribal student walked in my office to join anthropology, he was not interested in the Beer monograph, but in tribal development to play leadership role contesting the elections. With community development in 1952, things changed. Economics, with the assistance of statistics, snatched the initiatives of American and Indian anthropologists about community development programs as a strategy of rural transformation and transformation of man. So what are the crises at our doorstep? The phenomenal quantitative growth of higher education was not meant for acquiring knowledge, but for acquiring jobs and livelihood. An old, half-naked tribal person exclaims, "Education is agriculture, shiksha uski kheti hai." Why people clamor for reservation, competition, and agitation to be labeled as backward as per constitutional category? Our anthropological expertise is sought to adjudicate in such matters since this expertise is respected by the judiciary. The students are no more opting for anthropology except those who want to compete for civil services examination. However, the students are also not opting for basic sciences at the postgraduate level except those who want to go for research degree. There would be variations across the country in this scenario. How do we equip with skills for gainful livelihood with anthropology degree? Introducing anthropology at school level is not a solution for jobs, save as school teachers. Can anthropology be a vertical discipline? Since the times of pioneers, anthropology is opted by destiny than by design. I strayed into anthropology with economics, political science, and geography at graduation. I was trained at Sagar in the first batch of Professor S. Dubey. He personally taught research methods and applied anthropology. We had no tribal fieldwork, but rural dissertation linked to community development. Though selected in the first batch of UGC JRF, I joined Pune University as faculty in 1960, located at the Deccan College with Iravati Karve. She, as a classical anthropologist, had very close relationship with archaeology, going for excavations, and with linguistics. She went to the field for biological anthropology and walked with the masses for 15 days from Pune to Pandharpur, Vithoba, the presiding deity of Maharashtra. She did not write any tribal or village monograph, but dealt with kinship, going into the origins and linkage with Mahabharata, which could be branded as ethnology. I was drafted by her for guest lectures at the Preventive Social Medicine Department of Armed Forces Medical College in 1963 due to my background of applied anthropology, followed by Civilian Video Medical College, since the institutions were affiliated to Pune University with formal notifications from Defense Ministry and Maharashtra government. This led to medical anthropology, combining biological and sociocultural anthropology. The post-Congress Symposium of ICAES on medical anthropology at Pune in 1978, participated by Professor P. Joshi and H.K. Bhatt, provided international credibility. These developments led to socio-cultural wing of leprosy at WHO Geneva, Socio-Behavioral Research Division at ICMR, Ayush in public health in Ayush Ministry, and now naturopathy with linkage with Gandhi, and since tribe and nature are inseparable. It provided some anthropology employment at higher level and temporary assignments in research projects. In popular understanding, anthropology is understood as study of human origins and institutions such as caste and about tribal communities. At some places, we have good linkage with TRTI, Tribal Research Institute. However, TRTI as an appellate body of tribe certification necessary for reservation, other research has almost disappeared, at least in Maharashtra. We are invited as experts to study and make recommendations if ethnic groups claim ST status. Universities and colleges have been established in tribe-dominant districts with non-tribal faculty and largely tribal students. But they do not favor anthropology department with the view that the biological anthropologists heading the department would not be interested in tribal development issues. The Regional Research Center of ICMR at Jabalpur, meant for tribal health, has been studying the molecular biological issues of malaria. Regional Center of ICMR at Bhubaneswar has recently opened field stations in tribal block at Raigada. I do not know about their interaction with the University Department of Anthropology. Do we know that a lot of money from the tribal department goes to ICMR, ICSSR, and such other bodies? Do they justify these grants? ICSSR was established in 1969, with its first review in 1973. Anthropology panel under the chairmanship of Professor L.P. Vidyarthi recommended poverty as a priority research area. However, we have considered poverty as an economic issue and health as a medical issue. Why is poverty a group level phenomenon? Why tribal revenue units as district or tehsil should be at the lowest rung of human development scale as per the government reports over the decades, despite tribal supplant with crores of rupees of outlay? We analyze and find an answer to these questions. Do our students know of TSP, ITDP, TESA, FRA, and such things? Tribal administration follows the revenue model of a revenue clerk, Patwari, looking after 3-4 villages. In the development model of Jila Parishad, the Secretary of Gram Panchayat looks after group Gram Panchayat while the people live in hamlets. Can Gram Sabha with Pesa rights function in this model? There is 50% reservation for women in Panchayat Raj. There are CBOs, community-based organizations such as Mahila Mandal, self-help groups. How do they function? Are these not our research issues? I keep on shouting at every government meeting to address these women. At Pune, due to stifling in the combined Department of Sociology and Anthropology, we floated a voluntary organization as mentioned by Professor Misra, Maharashtra Association of Anthropological Sciences in 1976, open to all interested in human issues, while the separation occurred of the department in 1977. Tribal activists flocked to charge their knowledge batteries, as they said. Forest department was interested to understand the tribal issues. Preventive social medicine people were interested in public health issues. They came to us. We were offered a rupees 10 crore project on tribal malnutrition for 5 years in response to suo motu injunction of Bombay High Court on tribal malnutrition. Although an intervention project, it was based on the holistic strategy of anthropology administered by village volunteers, thus empowering them. Again, 10 crores have been offered, but we are inefficient in managing the kickbacks. Ayush Ministry offered a 3 crore project to study health ethnography in 4 states, followed by Center of Excellence Ayush in Public Health. Books have documented both the projects. A 4th foundation project to study sexuality in the context of HIV/AIDS for research capacity building by offering 18 small projects to young researchers was undertaken with qualitative methodology, but the books are not referred in our department. What is referred are the Google search options for research topics and literature reviews. What are our research priorities? Anthropology departments across the country are identified as biological strong or socio-cultural strong, with examples of breaking anthropology departments in separate biological and socio-cultural departments. Some of us from the UGC side pressurize the universities with punitive action holding back funding. if they wanted to separate. Anthropological Survey of India has been looked upon as an apex body of anthropological research and visualized as a role model. But there is no structural functional relationship in anthropology departments. Anthropological Survey of India had no regular director for a long time. However, the module of social impact assessment or project about re-study of village studies or about the most marginalized VJNT have been laudable. There is no reason why Anthropological Survey of India should not be a university by itself or an institution of national importance by an act of parliament. I do not know how the Culture Ministry and Tribal Affairs Ministry perceive anthropology. The directors of survey and IGRMS have experience of their perception and expectation. We do not yet have a national tribal policy approved by the parliament. When we think of jobs, anthropology can get jobs in collaboration with institutions dealing with priority issues about agriculture, health, development, rehabilitation. Who would study farmer suicide? I was laughed at while dealing with leprosy or with Ayush as being social work. But the WHO objectives of leprosy control and of the International Leprosy Organization have undergone change from patient to people. However, we seek funding from ICSSR to study an outdated leprosy colony as a leprosy village. How does it contribute to leprosy control? We are asked to evaluate National Leprosy Eradication Program, visiting the field. Medical people go to hospitals, we go to the people in the villages or to Punjab leaders. Anthropology has significant data on ethnomedicine. Government policies are out to fill local traditions. Two of our students at master's or research level take up the studies on policy issues. Have we analyzed government committee reports with rich data on various issues which are our subject matter? My experience is we have to do get trashing and offer help. Once they realize our capacity, they are after us. Some NGO fellows, after attending small workshops abroad, masquerade as anthropologists and interact with government administration for funding. A word on quantitative methods. Apex statistical body, International Institution of Population Sciences, Mumbai, declared low fertility in Goa, prompting the Minister of Health as chairman of governing body to follow the Goa model to solve population problem of India. IIPS knew the numbers, but not why those numbers came from. Why age at marriage of girls was high? Why the girls went for education? What were the Portuguese property rules in favor of women and recruitment as Christian clergy? Goa statistics comparable to Portugal or other Portuguese colonies, etc. These questions IIPS do not know. We designed the Goa qualitative study under the supervision of an anthropology student. We have several examples of this type. Our other senior colleagues would also have such experiences, but they do not get incorporated in our curriculum and we do not expand our concept of holism. I can only conclude that the forum is the right platform to address these issues. We cannot discuss everything in a short time. This is just the beginning and a good beginning. We should try to develop Indian anthropology as a professional discipline, which as a knowledge discipline is people-centric and humane. Professor K.K. Misra himself has written about paradigm shift in the Inca book. Let us think of that. As we see, Indian Election Commission is far more superior to American Election Commission. Why can't Indian anthropology be superior? Our image and anti-development has to be obliterated, and the future is ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mutatkar. Thank you for two reasons. Number one, for the very scholarly talk, and the second one is keeping the time as you promised. You keep it within 10 to 12 minutes. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now, I have the pleasure of inviting Professor P.C. Joshi. And now his only qualification is he is the Vice Chancellor of Delhi University, occupying such a prestigious position, and a Professor of Anthropology at Delhi University for long years. Professor Joshi, please.
Thank you very much. Good evening to all, and maybe good morning and good afternoon to some. Now, listening to Professor Mutatkar is always a pleasure. And today's topic is a very, very, I think, I would say, very important topic in the sense that anthropology, which I think has been perennially under crisis. And time and again, I think anthropologists have been meeting and discussing. So I think this is ingrained in the subject itself. I think anthropology is a very critical subject, self-critical. Of all the subjects, anthropology is perhaps most aware about its weaknesses, or at least tries to debate its weaknesses. I remember in 1982, 38 years ago from today, in Delhi University, we were running a journal called Spectra of Anthropological Progress. And some of you must have heard of that debate that the debate was again on crisis in anthropology. Much before that, I think Professor Mutatkar's teacher was there, Iravati Karveji. In 1967, there was a summer school in Dalhousie, where I think all the top anthropologists of India met for 3 weeks, and they stayed there for 3 weeks and debated on various topics. And of course, they also talked about crisis in anthropology. And as Professor Misra has told us about, right from Malinowski to Levi-Strauss. So I'll be more focusing upon what is the crisis, and the topic is contemporary crisis in Indian anthropology. I'll be talking about Indian anthropology more than anything else. Now, Indian anthropology, there are two, I think, regions, primarily two regions that I can identify. Of course, there are many more regions. First, I think, is our colonial baggage, that we are carrying. Anthropology, because it goes very deep into the private lives of people, very deep understanding of their nuances of the culture, becomes a very, very, I think, dangerous knowledge as well, because this knowledge can then be used to subjugate people, to exploit people, to use people. In fact, American Anthropological Association have been very vocal about this misuse of anthropological knowledge, and we all know how anthropological knowledge was used in Iraq War, in Vietnam War, and also the human terrain, which was in Afghanistan. Anthropologists were hired, they were paid very heavily, and then they were asked to give us the culture brokerage, or tell about the culture. So anthropological knowledge, because this knowledge is about how people behave in natural conditions, can be misused, has been misused, and that is one of the reasons why anthropology is not liked in many countries. In Africa, in most of the countries which have become independent of the colonial power, anthropology is not much appreciated. Not that anthropology has something wrong, because it has excellent methods. Second, I think the reason which I think Professor Mutatkar has always been telling us is our subject of study. We study, marginalized communities. We study tribals, we study Dalits, we study people who are have-nots. So we don't study the glamorous part of the society. We study pain, we study suffering, we study exploitation, and nobody likes that. Professor Mutatkar remember saying that even the Ministry of Tribal Affairs is like is a marginalized ministry, although it has almost equal budget to the Ministry of Social Justice, but it is a marginalized ministry. In states also, the Minister of Tribal Affairs is a very insignificant person. I think that goes to our subject as well, because we study these people, we study the people who are marginalized. So therefore, people are not very much interested. It doesn't concern them, it concerns others. And anthropologists study others. So for the people who matter, because we study others, that could also be one of the reasons why anthropology, is in crisis or is not very popular. Look at sociology and anthropology in India. I think sociology and anthropology had the same founding fathers. They were taught by the same W.H.R. Rivers, the founding fathers, And I think in India, it has been a lot debated that Indian sociology is nothing but social anthropology, or the methods of sociology are nothing but social anthropological methods. But then again, why sociologists have become so popular and why anthropologists have not become so popular? Again, the reasons are for us to investigate. And one of the reasons to my mind is because they also study maybe modern societies, the urban society, the industrial societies, or the so-called other kind of societies. And we generally are labeled as, although we don't only study tribal society, we're labeled as people studying tribals and Dalits, and that could be also one of the reasons for our this. And then secondly, now let us talk about teaching of anthropology, because that is also very much and in across India we know that it is not taught in all the states of India, and I was particularly concerned about it. I must confess that I wrote, once, I became very much interested in writing to the vice chancellors. So I remember writing to 5 vice chancellors in Kashmir, because in Kashmir there is no anthropology, to the vice chancellors in Central University of Himachal Pradesh, to the vice chancellor, Lama was there in Sikkim, and to also the vice chancellor in Odisha. And I wrote to them why they should have anthropology subject. And I think I'm glad to tell you that today now, at least Kashmir, we have anthropology, because it was not there at all. Now in Kashmir, we have anthropology in the colleges, and also Central University of Kashmir is looking for anthropologists. So this is, I think, this is one that anthropology is not there in, still it is, I think it is not there in Gujarat, if I'm not mistaken, because it's there in Vidyapit, but not as a department of anthropology. It is not there in Himachal. It is not there in Tripura. So there are many places where anthropology doesn't exist. And I think, and if we are concerned about anthropology, if we think anthropology is a very important subject, then we should think about it. And all of us, and I think this forum is a great thing that has come up, which is precisely going to look at these kind of issues, rather than other issues are taken care of by other associations. But I think this forum is going to precisely look at the issues which are not covered by other. And I think one of the very prominent issue that we are going to look at is advocacy. I remember, when ICMR, removed anthropology, every one of us became very agitated, and we had a lot of discussion, debates. And now I'm glad to share with you that the DG says, though, this was a very temporary thing. It is not going to be a permanent thing. We are going to correct it. So I think these are the kind of things. Then anthropology needs to be not only there in every state, anthropology needs to be there in the colleges, because generally it is there in the university department. So from the department should go to affiliated colleges. And thirdly, I think anthropology, knowledge of anthropology, because anthropology, is not only a subject. I think it's also a philosophy. It's also a way of looking at the life. And I think that way of looking at the life, which anthropology is, I am convinced of that, which is more inclusive way of looking at life, inclusive way of looking at the humanities. This should be, I think, taught right from the beginning, right from the time a child starts growing up, it starts having those seeds of intellectualism in him or her. I think anthropological knowledge, anthropological perspective should be there. So that is why I think it's very important, and I think forum should also take this up, is that anthropology should go to the schools. Of course, it is there in 1 or 2 places. I know Gregory Saab is here, who has done a great job in bringing it in Kerala. It is there in Assam. It is there in Odisha, or maybe West Bengal to some extent. But it should be part of the school curriculum as well, not because anthropology is a subject we like, but anthropological perspective, or the philosophy behind anthropology, or the inclusive idea of the word that anthropology, very forcefully puts across, should be there in the school curriculum also. So forum, I think the way forward, if you are talking about, this is one of the very important agenda. We must not take rest until and unless it is part of every college, it is part of every school in India. So we must try those sides. Then anthropology and civil services is another topic which is again linked to the crisis of anthropology. So sometimes, we get into civil services in a very big way, and then we are, removed. So something is happening to IAS as well now. But I just would like to share with you one very interesting fact, And there was a news item in Kashmir. And the news item was saying, and I'm talking that news came when Kashmir, there was no anthropology at all. And the news item in Kashmir was saying that Kashmir Administrative Service should be renamed as Kashmir Anthropological Service. Why? Because 90% of the people, those who were qualifying and civil services in Kashmir, were coming from anthropology. So anthropology and civil services are very, integral part of each other. And I think we should be very, very, I think we are not very concerned about it. We are not very vocal about it. I think anthropologists in India, in the forum particularly, should be very, very vocal, should be always interested that civil services everywhere, whether the state PCS or the national, anthropology subject should be there, because there are always forces which are trying to remove this subject. And time and again, I remember Vidyarthi Sahab played a very, very important role in bringing it in. But then later on, I was told that the subject or the syllabus of anthropology was made very, very complicated. I think that there also we need to, as a forum, we need to think about what should the right approach and how we can do about it. Now, in South India particularly, like when we are talking of crisis, I think I must highlight that there is a problem in South India. And this problem we must acknowledge. Problem at Tirupati, problem at Visakhapatnam, problem at Madras, problem at Dharwad, and also problem at Mysore. There is a big problem as far as the anthropology departments are concerned. There are no students coming there. Now, what are the reasons? One of the reasons for why students are not coming up perhaps has to do with sudden mushrooming of medical and engineering colleges, where most of the students are private engineering and medical colleges. So many people are going there and they became the subject of choice. But secondly, I think there is something wrong at the level of the university administration as well, or the state administration as well. Perhaps the teaching positions have not been filled there. There are very skeletal staff that is teaching, and therefore they are not able to attract people. Tirupati at one point was a very vibrant department, and Visakhapatnam was Gola Reddy and others, very vibrant department. And Dharwad was a very vibrant, you had T.N. Madan and Gopal Sarna teaching there. So all these departments were very, very vibrant departments. Now they are declining. And I think as a forum, we must understand, we must try to revive those departments, try to do something so that these departments are also able to. And this is also true of in many other places. Now, what is happening in these South Indian departments? Perhaps there is a lack of, college teaching anthropology. There is lack of maybe schools teaching anthropology. So there is no base from where the raw material may come. So that could be one of the reasons why it is happening. So we have to think about it. Ultimately, I think we must remember there are some weaknesses that we have, but we have some very, very good, I think, strength with us. And our strength is one of the very good strength, of course, is our perspective, where we are very open. I think we are very critical in our approach to looking at the truth. And our truth comes out of our own personal, experiencing the truth through ethnographic methods. I think that single most great character of anthropology, which has made it very popular across disciplines, across sociology, medical sciences. Anthropological ethnographic approach is considered to be very, very important. So our methodology is very unique, and this methodology has been adopted. I must tell you that there are many subjects which are mushrooming in India. Many departments are coming. After all, what are those departments? What is Department of Tribal Studies? How can you have a tribal studies department as not an anthropology department? What would you have in a tribal studies department if not anthropology? Then what is culture studies? There are now culture studies department which are coming up. They are nothing but anthropology. Now, I remember, way back in Patiala, I don't know what was the region, they started with a human biology department. They had an anthropology department and named it as human biology department. And I.J.S. Bansal was the head of that department, and L.S. Sidhu, who were both anthropologists, they started having those departments. But what happens? Now, these departments turn into big crisis because Anthropological Survey of India would not take them, because Anthropological Survey of India can take only anthropologists with cultural anthropology or biological or physical anthropology specializations. So they had a lot of problems. Now they have changed it to human genetics department. Okay. Now in Patiala, at that time, I remember somebody opened a department called Department of Anthropological Linguistics. Misra Sahab, you must know this. They had a department called Department of Anthropological Linguistics. I think that was a solitary department of anthropological linguistics in Asia and I think even in the world. So why should we have that? Then we have, in Ghasiram, Guru Ghasiram University, Department of Social Anthropology and Tribal Studies. Now, where will these students go? This is a big problem. In many places we had, in Allahabad, we had a Department of Social Anthropology and Sociology. Sai Saab is here. He will actually verify that. So, this is what is happening in many places. Anthropology is being they are starting anthropology with a truncated approach, with a, anthropology without the body or anthropology without the head, and they are starting it. Now, this is something I think forum should be there to advise them that anthropology is a unifying department. There is no meaning of physical anthropology if there is no culture. I'm telling you, if there is no cultural anthropology. Physical anthropology alone will become a second-rate medical science and nothing else. It is only physical anthropology which is having a union with social anthropology, cultural anthropology, that it will become a meaningful anthropological thing. Similarly, social anthropology without biological anthropology will become a very second-rate social science, not be anthropology. For it to be an anthropology, biological and archaeological aspects need to be, united with it. Then only the meaningful questions can be asked by social anthropologists. So I am firmly of this view that anthropology has its own path to carry, and we are now becoming super specialized. But by becoming super specialized, actually what is happening in the process, that we are not publishing in anthropological journals, we are publishing journals in other subjects. And no matter how much we work in other subjects, we'll be always a second-rate other subject. We can't be first-rate other subject. That is for sure. So in their journals, we will be again second position people. So let's have anthropology. Let's try to have anthropology. Let's have anthropological questions. Let us pursue anthropological questions in anthropological perspective rather than in a perspective of some other subjects. Of course, anthropology is a very inclusive subject in the sense that anthropology, for answering its questions, can freely take from other subjects. That's not anthropology never bars that we should only stick.
I think there was some temporary dislocation.
It looks so.
Sir, connection problem, I suppose.
Yes.
Internet connectivity.
जोशी जी क्या हो गया?
So that might be lost.
He was almost coming to an end.
Yes.
Maybe he can be asked to sum up when you sum up.
Okay, right. Should we move on with all your permission?
Yeah, he can supplement later.
Right. Thank you,
so,
thank you, Professor Joshi, in absentia, for this wonderful deliberation. And you have really pointed out some very important issues. While I'll sum up, then I'll tell you all those things. The next panelist is Professor Gregory. And, Professor Gregory is so popular among all of us. Retired from the Kannur University Department of Anthropology. And I know him as, or many of us know him as, probably an academic activist in the sense that he was instrumental in introducing anthropology in the school curriculum in the state of Kerala. Professor Gregory, please. I think he will show us a PowerPoint. Is that right, Gregory?
Yeah.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Can you see the PowerPoint? Hello? Hello? Yeah.
No, sir, it's not.
Yes,
it's
sir.
not.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yes. Okay. Good evening to all. Hope I am audible.
Yes, yes, you are audible. Audible.
Am I
Yes, you are
audible?
audible. Please go ahead.
Yes, you are. Okay. Good evening to all. And, I am very pleasing to participate in this important symposium on contemporary crisis in Indian anthropology. And my predecessors, Professor Mutatkar and Professor Joshi, had outlined some of the problems that Indian anthropology is facing today. And I'll continue to in the same line, and I'll brief some of the important points that I want to project. Now, as far as crisis in anthropology is concerned, as Professor Misra himself has pointed out, that it is not something new, it has been there since Malinowski, Levi-Strauss, and Raymond Worth, Rodney Needham, etc. Now, I have looked at this crisis in anthropology on along the seven important aspects. The first aspect is subject identity crisis, and the second aspect is existential or survival crisis. The third is crisis of subject appropriation. The fourth point is crisis of social relevance. The fifth point is research dissemination crisis. Then personal value crisis. Then institution efficiency crisis. Then employment crisis. So coming to the subject identity crisis, as already pointed out by Professor Joshi, anthropology being a subject, the hallmarks of which are holism and integration, it is under constant threat. In fact, anthropology is not exclusive to natural science or humanities or social sciences, but it is inclusive of all. Another aspect is not well recognized. There is an increasing tendency for specialism at the cost of integration. And there is an uneasy coexistence and competition with sister disciplines. And anthropology, though recognized as a subject, it is not included in the curriculum of the mainstream academic or professional bodies. Coming to the second crisis, existential or survival crisis, there is less visibility, less popularity, less demand for the subject. When I am giving these points, it may not be the intensity of these problems are not same across India, but some universities and some departments face more of these problems than other departments. There are dwindling takers, as Professor Joshi pointed out, particularly in South India. We see that the seekers for anthropology subject is dwindling, and it may be a symptom of the kind of demand for the subject or the image of its demand in the job market. We are unable to convince the stakeholders, the political class, of our claim of anthropology as a people's science. Academically, anthropology is confined mostly to PG level of teaching, and only in a few universities, PG teaching too is confined. At the UG level, only few colleges and in a few states. Anthropology is not a subject at the professional training, including Bar Council, AICTE, with alternative competitor well established. Coming to the crisis of subject matter and appropriation, the strength of anthropology lies in its field approach and its holistic understanding of cultures. Fieldwork itself is not anymore exclusive to anthropology today. On the other hand, there is an increasing tendency to belittle the significance of fieldwork in anthropological researches. Similarly, culture has become a subject of concern in many disciplinary studies other than anthropology. A work may become anthropological not necessarily by its label, but by its nature and essence. Coming to the crisis of social relevance. We have many times failed to respond to the call of the times. So it is bound to create a crisis of sorts. Anthropological response to contemporary and burning social issues, not much forthcoming. Can there be an anthropological response to social issues without divergent views, voices, without biased or partisan stand? That others could identify it as something unique to anthropology. Can we discern the sense of anthropologicality in our approach? A consensual approach in anthropological viewpoint. Coming to the research and dissemination crisis, there are not many researchers on innovative, challenging, and compelling human issues, or that could create a definite policy impact. There are not many analytical studies and concept and theory building, which is unique to Indian situation. The extent of our researchers, we have to ask this question: to what extent our researchers adhere to the basic research principles, namely beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, and respect. We should also ask how sensitive we are to adhere to the professional ethics, how conscious we are of politics of representation, and how, to what extent we maintain integrity. And another important problem that we come across is the non-visibility of our research output or policy reflections. Coming to the person value crisis, relativistic perspective with a holistic vision, the anthropological value to be reflected in our life too. We have to turn to become role models in our respective fields of engagement. Erickson says many anthropologists are impeccable cultural relativists in their daily work, while they may perfectly well have definite, frequently dogmatic notions about right and wrong in their private lives. Dubious credibility and integrity among professional anthropologists who are expected to impart the greatest humanistic values of the subject on the young minds. We also experience and come across power manipulations, jealousy, autocracy, arrogance, aggressiveness, bullying, selective perception, which are not uncommon among anthropologists in India. There is also internal fight among and lack of coordination between our related departments and institutions. Coming to the institution efficiency crisis, not all our departments maintain healthy and intellectual ambience. There are not many academic debates, dialogues, and exchanges that are characteristic our departments. Many times we come across divided house of departments of anthropology, lacking mutual recognition and appreciation, which is not uncommon. Also, we see not networking with anthropology-related departments and organizations, which reduces efficiency. We don't much maintain regular contact with the allies.
The same problem with Dr. Gregory.
Yeah, voice has gone. Hope you will come back.
Sorry.
Let us hope you will come back.
To develop required
I
networks.
think it's again internet problem, sir.
Please go ahead. Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
he's back. He's back.
Non-visibility of its applicability and of its social relevance, exemplifying our presence wherever we are, not imprinting our anthropological stamp to create a demand. There is a low motivation and professional competency, which is seen to be common among young anthropology candidates, with not much efforts to enhance it. There is a tendency for easygoing and not active enough to seek for opportunities, which is also found to be common. And there are systematic efforts to sideline anthropology from career openings by vested interests and system and other disciplines. Now, what is the way forward? Taking each of the crises, the subject identity crisis, anthropology could justify its existence, relevance, and significance only as long as it maintains its exclusive identity. Integratedness should get reflected in the curriculum and syllabus. We should revert to its basic orientation of force-field approach in its true spirit of integration. Uphold its true identity by including it under the Faculty of Anthropological Sciences instead of very selective faculties like Faculty of Humanities, Faculty of Science, Faculty of Arts, Faculty of Social Sciences. By including anthropology in one particular faculty, we reduce its identity. So it is better to have a Faculty of Anthropological Sciences with its degree being in Anthropological Sciences. So we will have bachelor's in Anthropological Sciences or master in Anthropological Sciences, similar to master in social work. Can begin with those universities where anthropologists head the universities. With regard to existential or survival crisis, the students at school level are exposed to different aspects of human beings in biology and social studies, which includes economics, geography, history, and civics, but they gain no integrated understanding. So what is required is we need to universalize anthropology at school level, as Professor Joshi mentioned, and professionalize it at higher educational level. We have to exert pressure to include anthropology in CBSE syllabus. We have to make it as a common subject at the college level, with developing a competency sufficient enough to handle anthropology at civil service. At PG level, it should be placement oriented. There could be integrated program with the comprehensive curricula. Should be made as basics in professional courses, optional in related subjects, and foundational anthropology as open course. We have to also organize popular lectures. Coming to the crisis of subject matter and appropriation, we need to become firmly grounded in anthropological orientation. Our attitude, value orientation, approach, understanding should reflect anthropological perspectives and values. Our works should reflect anthropological holism and voice the anthropological perspectives. With regard to the crisis of social relevance, we need to develop a basic talisman to characterize an anthropological response to social issues. We have to subject the issues of everyday life and contemporary social issues to anthropological scrutiny for a holistic and integrated understanding without any partisan or biased perspective. Anthropology visible to the common people as well as the intelligentsia. With regard to the research and dissemination crisis, we need to extend the horizons of anthropological researchers. We need to strictly adhere to the basic principles of research and professional ethics by giving due place to the subjects of research. We need to make visible all the anthropological research outputs, encourage analytical studies and conceptual formulations, make cultural and intellectual outputs into policy translations, impacting people's lives. With regard to the problem of person value crisis, we need to be role models for younger generation and exemplify with anthropological impact and professional integrity, freeing from dogmatic fixations, intolerance, and aggression. Adopt relativistic and humanistic value perspective and values of simplicity and humility, the lessons that we boast to learn from our indigenes. We need to display mutual respect, recognition, and appreciation. In short, let anthropology become our way of life. Coming to institution efficiency crisis, we need to take stock of all academic institutions and anthropology-related departments, organizations, and institutions. Let there be an institutional networking at the micro and macro levels. Let the academic departments establish a healthy and intellectual ambience for exchange of views and ideas at the level of people and at the level of scholars. Let there be cultural and policy translation centers with accessibility to the public. Let it provide a connecting link to its alumni networking. Let there be career guidance and placement cells. Let us leave the subject to voluntary accreditation to assess its anthropological excellence. And the last crisis, employment crisis, let placement become part of the curriculum. There should be no compromise in the quality and the intensity of training to equip oneself to compete with other disciplinary competitors. There should be openings for higher level training for competency enhancement. We should develop a thirst for in-depth knowledge, deep sense of curiosity, and continuous enhancement of one's competency. We should seek for career opportunities and furthering one's career prospects. We should also expand the career prospects and resist any tendency to deprive our professional opportunities. To conclude, we need to undergo the process of self-reflexivity. We need to reinvent anthropology by engaging with society. We need to adopt an anthropological oath, taking a pledge to become firmly rooted in the spirit of anthropology. We need to earmark a day as Anthropology Day. As of now, 3rd Thursday of February is observed as the Anthropology Day. We need to consider this and to take pride of our discipline and make its collective identity visible to the public. Let us become proactive in collectively responding to the contemporary crisis in anthropology. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gregory, for this wonderful PowerPoint presentation. It's very useful, I believe. But I think all of us had access to the PowerPoint. At least I could see it very well. Thank you so much. I think our next panelist is Professor Shalini Mehta. Shalini Mehta is a professor from Punjab University, Chandigarh. She had a very long stint as a professor of anthropology and a very distinguished member of our community. May I now request Professor Mehta to make her presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Good morning, Mr. G. Glad to connect with all of you, and after so many enlightened perspectives on the subject, I'm afraid I'm going to sound somewhat a contrarian position. Misra just said right in the beginning, most of us here have had about 40 years of experience in leadership. And Gregory at the end said, let's do some self-reflexivity. I call it introspection. And I do this introspection not only for my own self, but I think for many of us here who have spent long innings in anthropology without really taking stock of the position that how and why we failed. And I take this as a very, very categorical position. I may agree or disagree with a lot of what Gregory said. It's a very idealistic kind of a position in a very changing environment where departments are no longer being considered relevant. You have schools coming up all over the place. So to talk for an individualistic position in which anthropology can survive as disconnect in the form of being disconnected from other disciplines is really not going to happen. It's a world of interdisciplinary studies. It is a world of integrated approaches. It is no longer a world where you can have an exclusive anthropological approach. So it's very, very important and pertinent for us to have our own identity. But let me just reflect back on where and how and on what all fronts we have failed to keep, or we've contributed to what Gregory thinks is the crisis of anthropology. As Misra rightly said, for decades we've been saying there's crisis of anthropology, there's crisis of identity, there's crisis of survival. But here, particularly in the context of India, when Professor Mutatkar was speaking, and he was constantly referring to the works of Iravati Karve, I simply want to ask this simple question: how many departments of anthropology in India ever taught Iravati Karve or her contributions? It certainly did not happen in North India. As a student, as a teacher of social cultural anthropology, her contributions were not part of our curriculum. Who made those curriculums? Why those curriculums were constructed? Today we want to talk about Indian anthropology. How many Indian anthropologists and their approaches have we incorporated in our curriculums in the last 4 decades? You just referred to a crisis in southern India. I almost have a feeling as if there is a regional divide the way anthropology was taught in the country for 40 years. One attempt that I recall very distinctively was made by UGC to present a curriculum for the entire country for anthropology. Failed miserably. Mutatkar was at the helm of the affairs when we did this marathon exercise for almost 3 weeks or so, brought out a united curriculum where it made mandatory that you have to have 4 positions. Most departments, unfortunately, did not even open that massive book which contained n number of courses which could have given anthropology its integrated identity. So who failed? We failed. Today we talk about some departments becoming departments of anthropology, some department integrated, Joshi was emphasizing on this, that we must have an integrated notion or construct of anthropology. But let us please do some introspection. When departments decided to become predominantly physical anthropology or cultural anthropology, weren't the positions converted? Is there a single department in the country that has a position for linguistics? Please do inform me if there is one. I don't know of any. Why Department of Anthropology had to take the name of human biology or human genetics? Because they thought that they will have probably a better future. Maybe they can create a pathway for their student. In the process, they were left in the lurch. They were neither here nor there. What about archaeology? How many departments of anthropology in Northern India that I know for sure, where I've been a student of Delhi University and taught at Punjab University, how many positions were ever created for archaeologists? The ones that I know for sure were converted into physical anthropology as far as Punjab University was concerned. I do not know what is the story now in Delhi University. Probably Delhi University also doesn't have a single archaeological a person specializing in archaeology teaching there. So this introspection, when we are talking about, we also refer to publication. How many journals of anthropology today have international recognition? Who failed? Us. When we started publishing in journals outside the country, which in our times was a very, very difficult proposition, it is because you had this entire concept of citation index. If you don't have those citations, then you're not recognized or your work is not recognized. We also did not encourage our students to innovate, and that's my biggest challenge. Did we innovate enough? Did we change our curriculums depending upon the demands and the needs of the time? Somebody the other day was talking about business anthropology or anthropology of management or about training, about apprenticeship. Fieldwork is becoming a dying tradition. Now, if other disciplines have borrowed our methodology, have borrowed our approach, and have expanded upon it, wasn't that a total failure of our ability to market the strengths of our discipline, market the reasons why anthropology had a unique standing? Somebody was talking about, because we are studying marginalized communities, that is why we are a marginalized discipline. The disciplines that have taken over job opportunities from our students, where people were regularly hired with anthropology specialization, is primarily because we remain in a theoretical status quo. We told our students not to become activists. We told our students our job is to generate data and leave it for academic purposes. We really never asked them. We were taught to do that, and we never asked our students to go beyond that. So today, if social work takes away those jobs from us, who's responsible for it? Aren't we responsible for it? Where did we fail to innovate? To take any kind of ideological position, yes, the integrated nature of anthropology is critical, not only for the survival of the discipline, but for the criticality of its approach. Because what we know today is primarily because of our humanistic approach and how it is being utilized. I was intrigued that today when we are talking about crisis in anthropology, there are articles and papers being written with the titles like in times of consumer behavior, how do you encourage markets? And an article dated July 2020 by Hugo Refalovich on a platform called Wavestone is actually propagating anthropology as the way to keep the markets alive. And the title that I seem to have somehow misplaced here, the key to innovation, sorry, I got it. The key to innovation in times of crisis is the question mark. And the answer is anthropology, exclamation mark. Do we really, people have taken up those areas. They have brought the question of, they have brought it in areas and domains. So are we going to remain sacrosanct? Are we going to remain in a temple-like situation where we'll say, we are not going to allow our students to innovate. When our students started innovating and going into areas like cyber research, going into design anthropology, moving away from core areas, weren't they innovating enough? Did we encourage them to do so? Did we innovate enough in terms of our methodology? And there is this gradual grudge or crisis, and Otaji is here and he's going to speak after me. Policy. You know, there has been some kind of what you call as some kind of reluctance on our part to engage with the policy. What is it an outcome of? Is it an outcome of our inability to believe that the kind of work we have been doing has policy relevance, that it is going to grant us some kind of position in that particular domain? Why political anthropology, for example, was left only to the political scientist? Why disciplines like mass communication, which actually originated out of anthropology, we've not, why Department of Anthropology failed to evolve subjects like media, communication studies, which had a market for them? What is it? What was the pathway that we showed? I remember in all this, you know, there was a time when Department of Anthropology, Punjab University did not have a single student. Today, we get them like in 50s and 60s, and sometimes the department is not able, doesn't have large classrooms to accommodate them. Why did that change happen? Because suddenly the relevance, you know, the importance that the discipline is offering you some kind of outlets. When organizations like UNESCO and UNO started inviting them and calling them for job opportunities, we restricted our domain. So therefore the intention is this, that let us get over and let us really, through this platform and forum, we have to follow a two-way approach. First, hold on to the necessity of having a formalized institutional space for anthropology across board, starting from school level to undergraduate and graduate. But please remember that with the new structure coming up, with the new education policy making all those changes, where you are going to have only one research forum, you are not going to have bodies like ICSSR or social sciences receiving separate funding. Do you think survival of anthropology as a unitary discipline in an isolated space, as Gregory was trying to tell us, is going to be feasible or possible? So are we, through this forum, going to propagate a kind of an outdated classic model of anthropology, or are we going to innovate and think out of the box? Think out of the box with the kind of opportunities that we can provide to people who have had training in anthropology, people who are actually looking for employment opportunities in areas which are not purely. What do our students wait for? They wait for becoming either postdoctoral fellows at the most, or few of them may get some kind of opening in the departments. We don't have to train them to do that. We have to train them and bring about those methodological changes. And of course, it's very, very important for us to have a relook at our curriculum and start with what Professor Mutatkar said, that there has been an independent tradition of Indian anthropology. Nobody has ever really written or talked about it in so many words and tried to assert to the rest of the world that we do have an independent tradition of Indian anthropology, which was as strong as whether it was Manoskin or Radcliffe Brownian or Bosin tradition in other parts of the world. So through this forum, if I insist, and I've been persistently telling Professor Behera, our next target should be that it should be introduced at the school level as part of the CBSE curriculum. Yes, IS is one platform, but I sometimes regret how many IS officers we have produced with our training in anthropology. How many of them have actually gone on to promote anthropology as a discipline? And that's the tragedy. There's the tragedy that you sometimes get to hear, maybe because you people are too lenient. And that is why so many people with anthropology qualify, or your curriculum is not as good as that of the other disciplines. So let us demand some kind of a justification from them. The areas that are demanding or coming up, market opportunities that are there. We have miserably failed in the past to become a pressure group. And if this forum can become an active pressure group to pursue the interest of the discipline, to tell people the relevance of the subject, to highlight how we are going to, what is so distinct about our discipline and our approach, that we are the ones who, why should we now try and tell them that this is the most relevant science of human societies? It is the most relevant science of human societies. So they have to pay attention. They have to seek our intervention rather than us all the time trying to prevail upon them. Departments of cultural studies, you'll be surprised. The English departments, when they reconstruct and take their names as Department of Cultural Studies, what is it they're doing? They're rehashing anthropological texts. And then the tragedy is that when somebody like Arjun Appadurai visits your university, he doesn't even know that there is a department of anthropology. So for me, that is a greater tragedy, that we have not really been able to assert, we've not really been able to establish our identity, we've not really been able to show our youngsters what should be the way forward for them. So please, for once, my earnest request to all of you is that let us get together and become some kind of a think tank by which we can think of approaches by which we make the subject popular rather than keeping it as an isolated domain by itself. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. As usual, it was very assertive, and probably this is a kind of invitation to further debate and deliberation. So thank you so much. Our next panelist is Professor A.B. Ota. Professor Ota is an academic turned an administrator. Currently, he is a senior member of the Indian Administrative Service, working with Government of Odisha. He is the Special Secretary to Government of Odisha, as well as the Director of Tribal Culture Institute at Bhubaneswar. Because I know him pretty well as a very close friend, I know that Professor Ota takes pride more in calling himself a professor of anthropology than an administrator. May I invite Professor Ota, please?
Thank you, Professor Misra. Thank you all panelists. People have made my life easy, starting from Gregory to Mutatkar ji and Shalini ji. They have made my life easy. I can just, I more look at way forward. Whatever is the crisis, you have already said, but then I'm still tempted to maybe repeat 4 or 5 crises with which anthropology as a discipline is embroiled. Identity crisis is definitely there in anthropology. Why? You say identity crisis, already people have said, I'm not going to repeat. The next thing which is very important is anthropology is losing its presence at the decision-making level, policy-making level at the government. If you look at it, this was not the scenario in the past. See from, various Elwin's time, N.K. Bose, talk of, L.P. Vidyarthi, talk of even P.K. Prabodh Bhaumik, talk of none other than B.K. Roy Burman. They were all taken as advisors to Honorable Prime Minister of India, and they were working at the helm of affairs, advising the top administration. But of late, it is not happening. We must introspect and find out why it is not happening. We must have done some wrong somewhere. So what is that wrong and what is that mistake which we have done, which we should undo it and see that we are recognized. Third important thing, which Gregory has done it in his state and has shown it as an example, is non-existence of this subject at high school level and higher secondary level. Those are the feeder grade. If the feeder grade, the subject is not there, how can you expect students at graduation level? How can you expect students at post-graduation level? We must try. This is 2020 national education policy 2020 has just come. It has given 3 years time moratorium for the states to adopt it. I think this is an appropriate time that our forum has taken bath, and the new education policy has come, and each state will take a decision how to go about it. This is the right appropriate time. If we can really use this forum as a pressure group, talk to NCERT, talk to Human Resource Development Ministry, I think anthropology can see a better future and crisis can overcome. And once crisis overcomes, employment opportunities can also go hand in hand with that. Fourth, important thing I think I'm saying is declining in employment. You find anthropologists were taken in a number of departments, in a number of institutions, in a number of agencies. But of late, many such agencies, many such administrative departments, even international NGOs and NGOs are no more taking anthropology. What is the problem? We must try to introspect that, and we must have to go to those institutions, departments like, PC Joshi Sahib went the other day to ICMR and, got it restored. We must try to make a checklist and find out where anthropology as a, subject was taken for recruitment, but it has stopped. We must hammer them, and we must try to take our own, pound of flesh from them. And we must also try to analyze and identify where there is possibility of anthropology students to get into jobs. Out of the box, we should think and we should try and find out. I will tell you what little I have done in Odisha when I come to the web format. It is possible, like Gregory could do it in his state. I think things can have also been done to a certain extent in my state. So if we combine together all models, we can see wonders. If you ask me what is the cause for this kind of a crisis that we are in, I must blame ourselves. We as an anthropology community and we as anthropology, an individual entity. Somebody said, somebody might have been educated in anthropology, has got a good job, is in a high position. Hardly he or she has contributed to the growth of anthropology. I have seen, I will not name, people can guess and sense. People had occupied the highest position in university. From anthropology, they have denounced anthropology. They have said that the department is a substandard department and the teachers are substandard. If this is the kind of attitude with which we will, deal with the subject, being, benefited by the subject, then anthropology as a discipline cannot grow. So we have to blame ourselves, our, community, and you yourself, and I am also blaming myself. What is the way forward? I tried to jot down while others were speaking, way forward. I have jotted down 10 way forwards, which may be taken up by the forum. And when you stitch things together, you may consider this. The first one is, which already people have said, particularly Gregory has said and Shalini has said, inclusion of anthropology as an elective subject in both high school and higher secondary. And nothing like 2020 new education policy. It is an opportunity. It has given an opportunity to anthropology. We must approach CBSE, we must approach ICSE, and we must approach NCERT, which plays a very important role. And for your information, NCERT is headed by a professor from Odisha, Professor Sanapati. We can go in a delegation, we can even call him for a webinar, and we can talk to him, we can ask him to give a presentation, and we can humbly request him to please get it included. I think there is a possibility. Second important thing is that in all the universities, anthropology to be kept as a discipline for which MHRD, UGC, and the state universities should be approached. And this is the forum. We have a legitimate forum. We can use this forum to reach out. Third important, which is very, very important thing, I tell you, we have about 1,000 tribal subplan blocks in the state, in the country. Blocks having more than 50% tribal population. This forum can approach Ministry of Tribal Affairs. I will act as the intermediary. You can approach the Ministry of Tribal Affairs that they should give an instruction, or at least they should send a recommendation to all the states to have anthropology in at least one degree college in the 1,000 tribal subplan blocks of the country. This is a mandate of Ministry of Tribal Affairs to see the tribal area develops, and they are pretty aware of the fact that anthropology is a subject which deals also with the tribals, and it has got expertise. Realizing that, out of 10 experts, they have taken me and they have taken Bhagwan Da as 2 experts in their expert committee, 8-member expert committee, 2-3 days back. So we can take it forward. Third important thing I must tell you, fourth important thing that I must tell you is internship. We have number of corporate houses. We have number of NGOs, INGOs. We should try, each one of us should try and identify such INGOs, NGOs, corporate houses, and we must see that our students at the postgraduate level do internship with them. That will make them more employable. It may sound, that you may say that only 10 or 12 positions will come here. If you really stitch together the entire country and add that number up, it will be a huge number. So let us try to do that way. Another important, way forward, which I think, is we anthropologists at university level or at research level, we do not focus on action research. We do not focus on policy research. I think it should be mandated that we anthropologists should concentrate on action research and policy research more and more, so that our importance will be felt at the policy level. Reason for which LP Vidyarthi, B.K. Roy Burman, and others whose services were sought for by the helm of affairs of the country was only because they were doing research which was more on policy research, which was development research that they were doing, which we have forgotten over the years. Somebody said, I don't remember who the resource person, who the panelist is, field work over the years have taken a backseat. You see, we did our post-graduation in 1978. Even during those days, we used to go for 2 months to the field. We used to stay with the tribals. Personalities like Professor L.K. Mahapatra, N.K. Behera were our teachers. Usa Deka was our teacher. We were going to the field in 5th year for a month, in 6th year for a month. We were staying with the tribals. And that learning, I tell you, will enrich you so much so that you can make your career in anthropology and you'll be keen to have your career in anthropology. That is no more there. Field work is taking a backseat, so it has to be mandated that 2 months field work is necessary for any postgraduate anthropology to come out. Often we say that that everything is done at the policy level, everything wrong there for which our students are not getting jobs. During past 15 years, at least I must have taken 40 to 45 interviews in boards where other discipline students are appearing at the examination in the Viva along with anthropologists. I'm very sorry to say that anthropology students are not faring as much as other discipline students are doing. Why? We must analyze it.
Right.
We must, yes, sir?
Yeah, that's
Professor?
right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we must analyze where we lack. We must capacitate them. We must enhance their capacity in a number of ways. What are those ways? Ways you are pure academicians, you try to think over and try to make a roadmap for them. One thing I can definitely tell you, I was a physical anthropologist. Though in my subsequent years, I did work on development anthropology and did my MPhil and PhD in anthropology, development anthropology. But we have learned methodology, research method from L.K. Mahapatra. And the kind of research method, grounding that he had given us, even people refer to us now, though I am in administration. That kind of a field work and research methodology orientation is found to be lacking. When I ask students, about a thesis, it may be a PhD thesis, what methods you have followed, they are silent. They even do not know what is a priori hypothesis and what is a posteriori hypothesis. They have not read Narwhal and Cohen, I believe. Kamal Babu will, correct me if I'm wrong. We have read those days, Narwhal and Cohen. So you see, that kind of orientation is necessary, for which we teachers must also equip ourselves and we must capacitate our students. One more thing you find in media, social media or print media, all disciplines are coming up with popular articles to make others feel that their discipline exists. But I hardly find, for popularizing the subject, any article is coming out in social media or print media. I think this also should be kept in the agenda. And you see, we are always talking about employment opportunity. Unless employment opportunities are created for our students, they are losing their interest in studying We are not getting students with their first choice, for for anthropology, we are getting the second choice, third choice, having students in anthropology, for which the quality of students who are passing out, by and large, is not very encouraging. So what we have to do in order to survive anthropology, in order to create opportunities for the students of anthropology and to improve their capacity, is something that we must seriously think about. In this regard, I must tell you, collaborative approach has become the order of the day. We must do interdisciplinary researches so that our students can get equipped better and can get also better employment opportunities. Secondly, we must collaborate with many agencies which can generate jobs. I am telling you, I am a retired person. Honorable Chief Minister has kept me as Director and Special Secretary of the Tribal Research Institute of Odisha. Using my position, I have collaborated with 8 agencies, which has generated 65 posts, most of which I have filled from anthropology. How collaboration could be done, I'm just explaining you. I have collaborated with Regional Medical Research Center, with whom my institute is engaged in doing, disease profile amongst the PVTGs of Odisha and other 30 communities of Odisha. We have generated, positions, job for our children. We have also collaborated with United Nations Development Program on a couple of, areas, with UNICEF, with United Nations Family Planning Association, with Odisha Mining Corporation, with Mining Bearing Development, Agency. We used to get 5 crores every year. So these are only tip of the iceberg that I have said. There could be several other agencies. What basically I would like to say, we must also put in our roadmap or way forward more and more collaborative approaches wherein we can generate employment for our children, for our students, so that they won't feel demotivated, and first grade students will come, second choice having, third choice having students will not come to anthropology. This is what in brief I am saying. I have a long list which probably will take hours. I'll hand over the piece of paper to Gregory, who is our custodian. He will take it forward. But these are something which I wanted that I must make, put forth before you. But while making the way forward, we must see which are the low-hanging fruits and which are, which will take time. So we must make a short-term and long-term approach in our way forward. When we do, we have to be very careful. And if we stitch together all our suggestions, I think it will be a wonderful way forward that we can look at, and anthropology can try to march forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ota, for sharing your long experience in the field of administration as well as in anthropology. I think we will have a separate kind of occasion to discuss threadbare all these issues that were raised by Professor Ota. Our next panelist is Professor Arbind Sinha, who carries the legacy of Professor LP Vidyarthi, like
Vijay
Sahaya Bhai.
Sahaya ji.
Yes, right now he's the advisor and adjunct faculty at Mudra Institute of Communication at Ahmedabad. But he had a long stint at ISRO also as a communication specialist. May I request Professor Arbind Sinha to make his presentation? 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes, please.
Good evening, everybody. And I find in a very privileged situation because other than me, all of you have been at one point of time or for 40 years, 45 years in teaching of anthropology. I was not. So probably you can take my view, an outsider's view, but I can tell you, sir and madam, I have been equally concerned for the health of anthropology, and I was in touch with most of you at one point of time or the other, whether I was in Denmark Embassy or I was in ISRO or I was in MICA. I'm still with MICA. So my job was simplified by Shalini and Dr. Ota, because they all mentioned about it. But I want to say that the statement which I made in 1979 in a group headed by Dr. Vidyarthi in a seminar, probably Vijay and Ajit Singh were there, when I raised a question which is still relevant today, and I said that relevance of anthropology, published in 1981. I see another paper by Vinay Srivastava, and it says future of anthropology. We are today again repeating or probably attempting to address the same situation. It's not contemporary crisis. Definitely it's a recurrent, and I'm happy that at least we all have got together thanks to Deepak, and we are really examining it from different point of view. And anthropology to me is a very relevant subject for all these days. When I joined ISRO, nobody could even believe it. When I joined Denmark Embassy, nobody could even believe it. When I joined MICA and became MICA director, nobody could believe it that anthropology training will make somebody to reach that level. But I see three very strong attributes of anthropology: the study of culture, qualitative methodology of research, and holistic understanding of human behavior. Trust me, these are still the crux of any study that you do, any discipline that you name for. Culture is changing, and very rightly Salina mentioned that culture is changing, so our approach to understanding culture should also change. It's not culture and culture change, the attributes of change. Culture change for policies, education, telecommunication, education, or communication. All these have made some changes, and we should concentrate our focus on all these. That's what my summation is. Today, you talk to any, big recruiters are marketing research companies, marketing companies. They have their social sector programs. It is advertising company. They have social sector programs. They all look for somebody who understands culture, the nuances of culture, which they can feed to them. And they have not been able to get a good people. Some of them could find out, always they come for some recommendation and say, who understand it. Our teaching should be focused towards that. The methodology, ethnography. I heard somebody talking about ethnography, that we should not linger on talking about ethnography. I can tell you with all my conviction that ethnography is one method every discipline is looking for. London School of Economics, we had a professor and he was talking about ethnography. The so basic of anthropology he was repeating. Our students, our faculty member will be doing much more than that. I have been invited by many universities to talk about ethnography. It had changed. It's not the same ethnography which I used to do. It's not the same ethnography which Professor Vidyarthi or Dr. Saraswati taught me. 18 months to stay in a village for satellite instruction television experiment, or 19 months for sacred complex of Varanasi. Time has changed, or the time duration has to be adjusted as per the objective and affordability of the project. So that has changed. We have to change in that methodology also. In ethnography itself, ethnography, auto-ethnography, self-ethnography, netnography, all these new technologies are coming, new discussions are happening. We have to change a little bit. I don't say compromise on the philosophy, but core is still the same, which is anthropological in nature. Our students very clearly, most of us, they realize that the rigor of field study has withered away. Vijay was in the group when we were in the island for 1.5 months, traveling from one island to another island with a professor who was already international figure. And we learned a lot from that professor. Still we carry it. Our students, how much they want to dirty their hands. Everybody wants to go for easy type of research. So conceptualization of research, operation of research, analysis of research finding, and the presentation of research finding. These are the things which they have to master. And once they master, I tell you, probably they will be the first preferred lot of researchers or anthropologists, whatever the name they have, they will be working for that. Something which Uta Sahab has mentioned. Sir, I want to say that in academia industry interface is the talk of the academic institution today. All of them, they look forward for inviting people who are from the industry so that life experiences they can share, and they can also take our students for internship. That should be established, and probably that will help you a lot. We have to broaden our domain. Not only for, we always, I mean, from 1971, when I entered in the decade, that's anthropology, till date, we have the same stereotype of thing. There are other avenues mentioned by other speakers. Industrial anthropology. How many of us have special papers? I'm not telling that you have a department of industrial anthropology, but you can have modules of industrial anthropology, modules of development anthropology. Vidyarthi during his last time always talked about development anthropology. I was very close to him because of this 10th ICAES and other. Communication anthropology. What somebody said, it's a media. Media is one, communication is bigger, it's a part. And anthropology of health, little bit broaden the scope of medical anthropology, communication of health. So these are the areas where probably you can think about. One more based on my personal experience. There is a whole host of data collection people available in all states. And I can say they are in thousands who are employed under research projects for collecting one sort of data, social service data. And there's a big market for that. How many of our anthropologists have entered into that entrepreneurial venture of organizing such programs? It's a very pay, good amount, good exposure. And that otherwise, what happens, the type of people who are running this show, they don't know research anyway. These are my experiential, probably, suggestions to you. And since I say it's an outsider's view, accept it or you don't accept it. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Professor Sinha. It was very brief but very effective, and thank you so much for that. Our last speaker is Professor D.K. Behera, the president of United Indian Anthropology Forum, and currently the Vice Chancellor of Sambalpur University, a very distinguished anthropologist by his own right. I request Professor Behera to make his presentation. 10 minutes, please.
Please unmute. Unmute.
Thank you, Professor Misra. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to the sixth panelists who themselves are stalwart, and all of them have spoken about the contemporary crisis in anthropology in India. But anthropologists are good observers, and I have been observing. So all the six panelists, including the moderator, we are all retired people. And actually, when we are talking about contemporary crisis in anthropology, the floor should be given to the research scholar, student, mid-phase career anthropologist, because they are actually at the receiving end. So we have already shared our views. And actually, this is time for introspection and time for, innovation. We have to innovate, and innovate, rightly said by Shalini. And I liked her point very much. many of the points have been made at the macro level, but I would like to take you down to the micro level. Sometimes it is said truth, unpleasant truth should not be uttered, and pleasant truth should be spoken pleasantly. But what I am going to reveal, those may be unpleasant truth, but because we are analyzing crisis, I would like to bring up and touch upon those points. So I would like to touch 4 points because I think small is big and big is small. So first point would be teaching learning in anthropology in different departments. Second is that point has already been addressed, how there has been a dilution in fieldwork tradition in anthropology. Third one, how there is also a declining trend in research and publication in anthropology. Fourth, how there is an inadequate representation of anthropologists in policy-making body. And the fourth one, the way forward. So these are the 4, points I would like to touch upon, and the final thing would be the way forward. So first, teaching learning process in different departments. This year we are celebrating the 100 years of anthropology in India, but unfortunately, when we look at the grassroots, we see the absence of a database. We don't have a database of anthropology departments in the country. And forget about, the university department, even we don't have data about the college level teaching in anthropology, the faculty strength, and that is one area where the forum can play a very vital role. We must develop a database. If we want to overcome the crisis, then the solution is there, and the forum can provide the solution. My professor, Professor S.N. Natha, used to tell me that anthropology makes you a good human being. Anthropology helps you to handle situation, and it also helps you to deal with people, and it helps you to overcome crisis. So it is now the responsibility of an anthropology forum to overcome the crisis that has been contemporary. And many young generation anthropologists are facing that crisis. So the other point is like treating the subject, whether it is a science subject or social science subject. There has been a confusion, and people coming from social science background, they used to get a social science degrees, and candidate coming from science background, they would get a science degree. So there is a kind of identity crisis. So whether we should be placed in science discipline or social science discipline, so that has not been sorted out yet. And the output is dependent on the input. Many times we get student in anthropology from other department, and that is their last choice. When they don't get seat in other disciplines, they come and join. I may be excused with folded hand, but that is the ground reality, what I'm seeing. So that is when you are not getting good student, teachers are not magicians. They can't play miracle overnight. They can't transform them to a seasoned and a renowned anthropologist, because the input is not good. So that is what also we should try, how we can attract meritorious students to the discipline, because maybe of our wrong approach. We have been not successful to attract many meritorious students. And when the students join also, he doesn't find the classroom very interesting, because the teacher is not very innovative. He doesn't introduce new concept, new books, to the student, and the student feels demotivated. And that is the reason why many students also leave the subject maybe within 6 months. That I have been seen in my department, and they are not introduced to the original book. How many students, you tell me, even teachers, they read original book, classic book. That reading habit has gone, and that is no more there. So I think that is one of the problem, and we never teach them also, rightly said by Shalini, that how many student or teacher know about Iravati Karve and her contribution to the discipline, whether it is N.K. Bose, Iravati Karve, L.P. Vidyarthi, M.N. Srinivas. They don't know where even these legendary conducted their field work. So that should be integral part of our course curriculum. And not only the subject matter, anthropological awareness. You ask today's student, do they know about the Anthropological Association in India? Do they know about the anthropological journal coming out from the country. They have no idea, you know. They are very commercial in their approach. They just think about the examination. And the problem which I notice that medium of instruction, because now the medium of instruction is the, you know, mother tongue, the local regional language. So in the Hindi belt now, you don't get many good books in, reference book, textbook, written in Hindi, written in Odia, written in Telugu, Tamil, but you go over anywhere, you know. So students are taught in regional language, and good textbook and reference books are not available. And that is why they find themselves at the receiving end, and they don't get exposed to the original books. See, I have taught in many overseas universities as a visiting professor, and their student seminar is given very, that is given a lot of importance. Student would be asked to deliver a lecture, and you have to prepare the student, and that is not happening in anthropology. So that is why, that is one way process. The teacher would come to the classroom and deliver the lecture. Student never get that kind of exposure. So in anthropology, what is very important, I think, we should train our student, to teach, and then probably he will develop. And see, Professor Rota said, and also Dr. Sinha said that, there are job prospects, but just getting the subject knowledge is not enough, Our students fail to compete with others, rightly said by Professor Rota, because they lack soft skill. And soft skills should be made integral part of the training. How do they communicate? How do they speak? And, how do they write? And how do they are they computer savvy? Unless until you are computer savvy, you can't take advantage of many, digital platform. And now also there is something like digital anthropology. So our students should be given exposure to soft skill, and they should be trained also, we have Professor Bhagwan Roy, he imparts lot many training programs. So the forum should also try to impart training to the candidate, to the student, even teachers, and they should be trained in methodology, they should be trained in soft skill, so that they are employable. If they are not employable, they cannot fetch a job from the competitive market. It's very, very difficult to fetch a job from the competitive market. And sometimes, teachers, we should also blame ourselves. We never try to update our knowledge. We use the same old notes in our classroom. Then that is why, the students fail to, concentrate, and they don't find the classroom situation interesting. And rightly said by Professor Gregory, it should be introduced at the, undergraduate level and even lower level, so that we get many students with anthropology background joining higher level of education. Second point, this dilution in fieldwork tradition. Already this point has been touched upon. So fieldwork is the hallmark of anthropology. And I am reminded of Margaret Mead, and she rightly said, we shall have no way to make an anthropologist except by sending him or her to the field. I repeat, we still have no way to make an anthropologist except by sending him or her into the field. So how often we take this quote seriously? So fieldwork is a method of investigation where the field worker has to go to the field, and he or she has to get experience, and he or she has to collect field data. That is not happening, in postgraduate department and in any departments in the country. Sometimes teachers feel it is too risky to take students because of the health related issues. Students are also not interested. They think that it is a kind of excursion, and before going to the field, they don't read also literature. They are not given right kind of an orientation. Hardly see ethnographic study, and also, the teachers and sometimes, what is important, field notes and field diaries are not written. And you look at the life history of all the outstanding anthropologists, starting from L.H. Morgan, and he studied the Iroquois of Native American. Then Rivers, he studied Todas. French was the Eskimo in Baffin Islands of Canada. And you see Redcliffe Brown, Andaman, and Maurice Soplers, Oscar Lewis, David Mendelum, all of them did, village study in India, FG Valley study in Bishop. Why they are famous? Why they are noted? Why they are stalwart? Because of their field work. They did original field work. Barbara Ball did a very good research in concept Odisha, and Verrier Bondas of Highlanders. Anyone, my friend, he is no more, Professor George Pepper, did a wonderful work among the Gadava. And his disciple, like Professor Roland Hedenberg, did wonderful research in Odisha among the Dangriakans. Any stalwart in anthropology, is known because of his field work, whether it is S.C. Roy, like the Mundas of the M.N. Srinivas, Crooks of South India. But that field work, is gradually, withering away, rightly said by Professor Ota. And it is Bronislaw Malinowski who taught us how culture, society, and people are to be researched and research coherently. And he introduced the participant observation and all those methods. And look at the French bois scholar like Ruth Benedict, Margaret Mead, and Cora Du Bois, Margaret, and they all did wonderful field work during 20s and 30s. Same thing we also noticed with another, female anthropologist, Mary Douglas, who made a wonderful study among the Congo. So all they are known for their fieldwork, and this fieldwork tradition must be revived. We have to revisit fieldwork, and rightly said by Professor Ratha, we attracted, my Department of Anthropology, Sambalpur University attracted more than 100 overseas scholars just because for one thing, fieldwork tradition, and that is no more happening. So I think we have to revisit and revive the fieldwork tradition. The third point which I'm trying to point out is the declining trend in publication and also research. So number of original research, is declining, drastically declining. And the majority of not only the scholar, even the supervisor, and they lack the writing skill. I'm sorry if I'm very blunt. And because they don't read scientific journals. And if you ask them to name 8-10 journals, overseas journal, anthropology journal, and Indian journals, probably it is not only the scholar, even some of the supervisor would fail to utter those names. And that is why they find difficult to publish their article in peer-reviewed journal, impact factor journal. And even, what happened, it is not only social anthropology, because I am from that subdiscipline. In physical anthropology, biological anthropology, many departments do not have advanced laboratories. When you don't have advanced laboratories, you cannot come out with very important research findings to share with the international community. And we make a compromise. Many compromises have been made as far as data collection is concerned. And what we find normally the repetition of study. So I will do a piece of work which has already been done by an anthropologist elsewhere in India or elsewhere in a different part of the globe, and we don't find any new thing. That is why we have not been able to develop concept and theories, our indigenous concept and theories in India. That is one area where we are lacking, and lacking severely, seriously, and that has been pointed out by Professor Joshi. And we failed to analyze, our field data. We failed to relate. I am reminded of my colleagues from Germany, Professor Pepper. He said that you Indians are very good field worker, but probably you fail to connect your, research, field data with theory and concept. That is one area we don't know how to do that. And we think that review of literature is like cut and paste, and it is not done scientifically. We don't know also how to write references in the right manner. If we want to publish a journal in a very standard and reputed journal. And we never think about also interdisciplinary kind of thing. If you remain within the domain of anthropology, we can't be very innovative. So we must borrow idea from other disciplines. There is nothing wrong if we cross the boundary and try to enrich ourselves, getting good things from other disciplines, so that interdisciplinary things is also missing. The third point which I would like to touch upon, no, the representation of anthropology in policy making body. Probably this has already been touched upon by Dr. Rota, Professor Rota, and because that is why we have not received right kind of recognition. The cultural perspective on development is to be emphasized, and that can be done only when people are at the policy level. We should take culture as the infrastructure. Borrowing idea from Marx, I would like to put forth this idea. So, like the economic infrastructure, and upon which the superstructure is based upon, anthropology should take culture as the infrastructure upon which the superstructure is based upon, including the economy. And that cultural perspective on development, if that is realized, many times they don't understand what is cultural resource mapping, what is intangible culture, how cultural regulators are so important in maintaining a balance within the community. So this can be, this should be emphasized, and the policy, our student, scholar, should be there in the policy making body. Only when that is possible, then we can make our presence felt to the people in the administration and people in the policy making, and that is why the forum can play a very vital role, and then forum can act as a pressure group so that our anthropologists will find place in policy making body in different line departments of the government, and that is not happening. And what is actually anthropology provides intellectual equipment enabling all the scholar to open their minds so that they can contemplate new concept, ideas, and facts. So this is the fourth point I covered, and the last one, that is the way forward. We must make a SWOT analysis. Previously it was SWOT, now it is SWOT. Strength, and then weakness, opportunity, challenges. Threat has been replaced with challenges now. So as a discipline, we should see what are we have already analyzed, our weakness and challenges, but that is a pessimistic way of looking at things. We should have a positive bent of mind. Okay, that to weakness, analyzing the weakness will provide you some kind of strength, how you move about. The forum will provide a solution. So we have already discussed many points relating to crisis and how this crisis can be overcome. That we should first of all try to create a database, as I said, of different departments and organizations in the country, even going to the college level, organizational level, and university level. Database is a very, very important, and the forum should try to generate the database through the journal level committee. And this subject, rightly said by Professor Gregory, should be introduced at various levels. That is one solution. And let this forum act as a pressure group to introduce the subject at various levels by approaching different educational bodies. And we must revisit our fieldwork tradition. We must revamp the fieldwork tradition. Otherwise, we cannot produce good anthropologists. I tell you, if anybody cannot be a good anthropologist without doing fieldworks. I proudly say I have done it 20 times in my life, and I have spent 6 months many times a long-term fieldwork. Fieldwork means at least you have to spend 1 year. I beg to differ from Professor Sinha that we have to innovate, but the basics should not be compromised. If we are talking about a fieldwork should be a long-term fieldwork, and there is nothing shortcut to fieldwork. And also, we should train them. Our our teachers should be trained in research methodologies. Our students should be trained in fieldwork, so that and we should innovate. Otherwise, that kind of training should also be provided by the forum. All solution is there with the forum, and we should also try to act as a pressure group to influence the policy making. Recently, that has been done once by the forum through Professor Joshi. We should keep on doing it. And I think anthropologists are the most skilled technocrats. I would like to put it. some of my lecture. They are the most skilled technocrats who can readily assimilate all sorts of knowledge to enrich their own discipline. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Behera. Now there is a question to you personally and to others also. It's like this: we have sat here for a good more than 2 hours now. Initially, I thought that I should give 15 minutes for some kind of interaction or question answer. But if you like, then we'll continue. And after that, I'll sum up. Otherwise, we'll drop the question answer session and straight away go for summing up.
I think a few questions should be entertained, and there should be. I have a strong feeling, I'm rather provoked that we should listen to the youngster.
Exactly, I agree.
Their idea of contemporary crisis in Indian anthropology, because we are all retired people.
I completely agree with you. Actually, we are not at fault because our experience also, adds to the kind of questions that we are raising. All right, let me now invite 4 or 5 questions, preferably from younger scholars. Should not be a lecture, should be pointed question to a presenter or to a panelist, so that could be answered if he or she is around. Who is going to ask?
May I, sir?
Please go ahead.
Sir, namaskar to all of you. At the very outset, I would like to congratulate all the panelists for their excellent presentation. Each of them has a distinct presentation, but together they discussed the common issue that is crisis in our subject anthropology. And amidst all, I would like to make a humble submission that among many crises, one which the young research scholars and students are facing is publication of research articles. My humble submission to this forum is to bring out at least one, annual journal or biannual journal with a few senior professors and 1 or 2 young budding anthropologists contributing it, going through editorial board with good impact factor, which will definitely help the bright research scholars to have to contribute in the field of anthropology in a good way, in a proper way. Yeah.
All right. This will be discussed by the forum, and then that will take enough working. That we'll leave it. This doesn't come under the scope of this panel discussion.
This is just a humble submission, sir, to bring out a journal.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any
other question, please?
Yeah, can I say, sir, Amitabh here?
Yes, please go ahead, Amitabh.
Good evening, all. It was enjoyable listening to the elders in anthropology. I should say that because I, being the student of Professor Misra, my question is that because I moved from physics to anthropology, my question is, why can't we have a single department of anthropology uniformly in all the institutions? Because we were seeing the various teachers were discussing that we have multiple nomenclature we are giving. So single institutions is one very important aspect which I would like to have it. Second is we need to become interdisciplinary outside, because I am working again like Professor Sinha. I am away from anthropology, though in an anthropology faculty, but at Indian Institute of Forest Management, the interdisciplinarity is very important and coming very strongly. So when I see the papers outside research, they are working in a team. And very rightly said by most of our speakers that the international agencies repute anthropologists a lot. But when I come and when I approach them, I see them. We need to revive them and then bring this interdisciplinarity within the anthropology discipline. So this is my 2 concerns, sir.
Thank you, Amitabh. Thank you.
May I?
Yes, please go ahead. Sir, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Though, of course, Professor Behera said that he would want the young people to participate, and I thought that I am the youngest of the lot. So
Of course, I agree.
Okay. I came just pushed myself for one simple reason, that I want to make a suggestion which I think is important. That suggestion is, so far the presentations which have been made are excellent, and there are a number of issues which have been identified, and which we should not allow it to just pass away. So I want to impose a task on moderator as well as to Professor Gregory, that identify the issues and then prioritize them and then have a discussion on those topics. So and then the last part of it would be the way forward, that we have identified this issue, we had a discussion, and this is what we want to way forward. And I think that's an important task, that this discussion which has happened in air should not go into the air. And therefore, the task is that we identify the issues and then prioritize them, underline. Okay. The second thing which I would like to say, rather once again very strongly, and this is I am reflecting what my gurus said, Professor N.K. Bose or Surjit Babu, that anthropology is a state of mind. In case if you have not brought anthropology in your mind, then forget about it. You can never become, because the point which I am trying to make it, that you cannot remain a part-time anthropologist. So that realization should always be at the back of the anthropologist. Third, repeatedly, almost all the speakers have said about the lack of fieldwork. I think this is once again a very important issue. I work in Anthropological Survey of India, and I know what's happening in Anthropological Survey of India, which was in fact a very big institution for the fieldwork and all that, where the tradition of fieldwork has come in. But having said this, and this is the last point which I'm making, that it was easy for Margaret Mead and everybody else to go into the remote areas and do fieldwork. Where is the field now? And in fact, that point has been made very strongly, that the natives have started hitting back. In other words, that unless you change your attitude of fieldwork, Margaret Mead and everybody, including Rivers and all that, they did fieldwork and disappeared. And they themselves, though they consider anthropology is a very important, did not do fieldwork in their own society. This is a very important point, because once if you go into the remote field and do the field work, at one time it was a hierarchical relationship between the field worker and the field they studied. Okay, but that kind of a relationship cannot be established, and anthropologists in particular should break it completely. And therefore it is important to have one session on the tradition of fieldwork in anthropology, which is in fact, and that is absolutely necessary. Thank you very much for giving me this much of space for talking to you. Thank you.
Sir,
I think,
hello.
I think Dr.
Good evening,
Gregory
sir.
has.
Hello.
Hold on for a minute,
Yeah,
please.
I'm Anjali Kurne here. Misra, sir.
Wait a minute, madam. Gregory, I think you have noted down because Professor Misra has already prioritized that what thing has to be done first and then subsequently, and then we will have a discussion about these things. Yes, Anjali madam, now you can go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, I would congratulate to all panelists. All the speakers' lectures were very thought-provoking. And this is not question. I just want to provide some information of Pune University Department. Some years back, this is particularly to Shalina madam, that we have started teaching. Rather, we teach Indian anthropologists, and we have not only included Indian anthropologists in our course, but we have also included Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, Mahatma Phule, Savitribai Phule, Shahu Maharaj, and Rajaram Mohan Rai as an anthropologist and their contribution to Indian anthropology. And this course is very helpful, that along with the British anthropologists and American anthropologists, we thoroughly teach all the Indian anthropologists. So Pune University is doing it very enthusiastically, and it helps.
Excellent. Congratulations.
I just want to convey that if if other departments
Yeah,
if
sure.
they start
Sure.
teaching Indian anthropologists, particularly one course on Indian anthropologists. So we have Indian anthropology and Indian anthropologist.
All right.
Indian
Thank
anthropology
you so
we
much.
teach for the first semester and Indian anthropology is for second semester, and both the courses are, we have taken it as in core courses and mandatory.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we should wind up the question answer session.
Sir, very important issue, sir. Mr. Sir,
हाँ, बोलिए, बोलिए,
this
बोलिए।
is NK Vyas from Delhi. Meeting
बोलिए,
some
बोलिए।
of you for 20, 30 years, 35 years also. I have one, two things. All of you have said great things.
I know you personally, Vaid साहब, लेकिन जल्दी बोलिए।
हाँ, first thing is, जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. Sir talked about the media, but nobody talked about writing textbooks. Unless you write textbooks for the freshers, how can the subject be promoted? First thing.
Right.
Secondly, Professor K.C. Malhotra, Lalit Kumar and myself, we have started an anthropology course in a management school and it's doing very well. And this session, maybe 3 or 4 schools will be there.
Good.
Third thing is there in UPSC, there was the content of development anthropology and international relations, but that was deleted. If that was there, things would have been very good. And last thing is that we always harp on that economics and politics, they are taking edge over us. We just have to do one thing. For economic anthropology, we have to change it to anthropology of economics. Political anthropology, we have to change to anthropology of politics. And we can have edge on both.
Yes.
Misra ji, I have one suggestion.
Yes, please.
Because in our country now,
I can't see you. I can't see you.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Professor Misra, in our country now, very good private universities are coming.
Yes.
So I think we can also impress them to start anthropology as a course in private university also. That is a very because they have a lot of financial potentialities there. Recently, Professor Kalam has joined as a professor of anthropology in SRMT University. Professor Kalam, Madras University professor.
Yes.
This is my suggestion.
Thank you.
Answer to Professor, my guru, Professor P.K. Misra. Sir, anthropology study the culture. Culture is changing very fast. So we have also changed our methodology because it's not only tribal studies in ethnography used for tribal study. Ethnography has been, I myself did 19 months field work in Varanasi, 18 months field work in a rural area, and one of my students stayed or joined an IT company to have an ethnography of IT company. Over, sir.
You can't write?
All right.
Professor Misra, I think it is
I think
time for you to conclude and do the summing
up. Of course. Thank you so much. I think first of all, I must congratulate all the panelists for this wonderful presentation, for taking out time from their busy schedule and making themselves available for this panel discussion. I'm sure that this must have been very, very learning sort of experience for our younger scholars. Now, there were 7 panelists, and unfortunately, Professor Srivastava could not be present because of health problem. Let me begin with Professor Mutatkar. Very quickly, I'll sum up in 2-3 minutes. Professor Mutatkar's basic point was a lack of professionalism. I think we should ponder over this, that how anthropology also could become a professional subject like any other professional subject, so that it will have marketability. Of course, he talks about jobs and livelihood. He talks about practical utility. And then he has given many examples from his own research, so that anthropology could be sellable, could be marketable, and that will bring an honorable position for the subject. Joshi ji has raised some very, very good issues. He said that the colonial legacy still continues, and anthropology has been misused or abused, because many people say that it is a tribalogy. I think I have also experienced in my life that Anybody who talks about anthropology mostly thinks that we are only doing tribal studies. I think this is the kind of abuse or misuse he talked about. And he thought that we only study marginalized communities. So there should be some kind of change in the attitude in our work so that other people know. He talked about teaching also. And he said that there are not many departments and there should be more anthropology departments in colleges also. And basically what he pointed out was that there should be a philosophy behind anthropology which should be taught from the school level onwards, so that that will have a bearing on the young minds or on the coming budding intellectuals of this country. Then the third presenter was very systematic presentation by Professor Gregory. He said that there are 7 problems in anthropology. And then also he said that there are 6 ways forward. But the basic thing that he pointed out was that the subject should be more reflexive in order to attract more and more scholars, in order to become more productive. He talks about the subject-society interface. Anthropology should have relevance or bearing on human society, otherwise it becomes redundant. Here, of course, he talked about an anthropology day that is left to the UIAF to consider, and also an oath by all anthropologists. I think it is very ambitious, but thank you, Dr. Gregory, for thinking something out of the box and then suggesting for this wider audience. The next was, of course, a very powerful speaker, Professor Madam Shalini Mehta, and she began with introspection. Of course, you are very true, madam, that unless there is an introspection, probably we can't move forward. Every time, at every step, there should be introspection. And I, as a teacher, understand that how we have refined our anthropological theory from evolutionism today to the postmodernism. It is only because of introspection. You also pointed out about interdisciplinary focus. It is very important. Dr. Arbind Sinha also speaks about it, and others also speak about it. I think this is very important, that anthropology should not be compartmentalized or should not be confined to its a small arena. It should be open for other disciplines to interact with us, and interdisciplinary is very important that you said. You talked about the contribution of Indian anthropologists should be a part of the curriculum. Completely, we agree with you that yes, we are not teaching much of Indian anthropology, about Indian anthropologists, although there have been many theoreticians, very good theoreticians, right from the beginning, and we have to include the contribution of Indian anthropologists in our curriculum. You talked about the journals, and there are not much of outside recognition of Indian anthropological journals. I think that is also one of the crises I also feel with you. Marketability, of course, you talked about, and along with others, you also pointed out that anthropology should be innovative, and at the same time, it has to be diversified. It could not be confined to its own cocoon. Otherwise, it will have a slow death now that it is facing, and it has to be diversified depending on the requirement of the time. The next speaker was Professor Ota, and then he shared his experience with us at the policy making level. Then he said that there is a decline of employment of anthropology students, although he has done his bit as an administrator, whatever he could do. He had recruited people, and I know also personally that he had recruited many young anthropologists to his organization and his sister concerns. One important thing Professor Ota has pointed out, that anthropology also should fit into the new education policy 2020 so that it will have more relevance. I'm happy that he is a member of one of the committees out of several committees to include and to implement the new education policy in the state of Odisha, and I'm sure that he will contribute his might for the entry of anthropology into various curricula at this state level. Then he had a 10 points way forward, and one of the things which I was really attracted was the internship. I think at Hyderabad University we had also tried something of that kind, internship of master students during summer vacations, during other vacation times, or after the course is over. They can go to many NGOs and INGOs for internship that gives them a hands-on experience about what things they're supposed to do in future. He also talked about strengthening of the fieldwork, also the methodology. Students now do not know the kinds of methods that we use. And another thing that is very important, he talked about the vernacular, press. The publications probably should come in vernacular so that local people know about this subject. He also emphasized on the interdisciplinarity of anthropology. Otherwise, anthropology is going to die. The next speaker was a very powerful speaker, Professor Arbind Sinha. He spoke for 5-6 minutes, but then he spoke on 3 issues. Number 1, as culture is undergoing change, similarly, the subject which study culture also should undergo change. Then he talked about the method. We should also devise new kinds of methods depending on or the demand of the present time. But then he also emphasized that holism has to be maintained in anthropology. Probably his most powerful argument was that there should be, or rather suggestion was that there should be a very strong academic and industrial linkage if the subject has to grow. Without a linkage between industry and academics, the subject probably will not move ahead. And as we have seen in many science subjects like biotechnology, bioinformatics, and so on, there is so much of industry and academic linkage. I think we should think very seriously about this kind of linkage with what Professor Ota said, the internship. And probably that should be a part of the curriculum, that every student during the summer vacation, instead of wasting their time, they should go for an internship. And we should create a kind of avenue by linking ourselves or by negotiating with the NGOs and INGOs so that our students can go for a meaningful internship for about a couple of months. The last speaker was, of course, Professor D.K. Behera. And then his concern about young scholars is very much appreciated. He talked on 4 different things: teaching and learning, then dilution of fieldwork, then research publications, which one of our students also, Itisri also, has pointed out. And finally, he said the role of anthropology in policy making. These 4 issues are really interrelated, but because of these, anthropology is taking always a back seat. We should be proactive in promoting these 4 things: teaching and learning. That database also, very rightly pointed out, right now we don't have a database in how many colleges anthropology is being taught. Literally, we are struggling to get the number. So there should be a database of all anthropological institutions, teachers, student profiles, and so on and so forth. And then his suggestions for role of anthropology in policy making with a strong fieldwork background should not be taken with a pinch of salt. I think this is a very powerful suggestion that he has made. Dear panelists, you have contributed so much to this panel discussion, and that is the reason why it has become so productive. I'm very glad that I was given this opportunity of moderating this very important panel discussion. I thank the United Indian Anthropology Forum in general, to Professor D.K. Behera in particular for giving me this wonderful opportunity. Again, thank you so much. And by this, I am announcing the winding up of this panel discussion.
Sir, sorry, just a minute. Professor Gregory, may I request you to propose a vote of thanks as the secretary of the forum? Professor Gregory. Unmute, sir.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, on behalf of the forum, it is time to thank the panelists, and our moderator, Professor K.K. Misra. This particular topic, as Professor Behera pointed out, this is the third important seminar that the forum had been organizing. And I'm happy that we are able to tackle one of the important areas that the Indian anthropology is facing today, and the crisis that Indian anthropology is facing today. As we have already pointed out, this crisis is not something new, and every subject faces its own crisis. So also anthropology also is facing a crisis. But what is important is how we are able to respond to the challenges the crisis is giving to us. And I'm sure that we have made a stock of what the crisis is. And as Professor P.K. Misra pointed out, we need to prioritize these issues and go deeper into this each and every aspect of the crisis, and chalk out and prepare a roadmap. And I'm sure the forum will take this task very seriously. And I'm thankful to Professor K.K. Misra, who has very efficiently managed the entire program and summarized the entire deliberation. And each and every one of the panelists who have participated and given very important points, and we need to sit together and prepare an action plan. And I'm sure the zonal committees that we have in this forum will involve in a greater way and involve in preparing an action plan for anthropology for future. Thank you very much, one and all. And I'm once again happy to say that the forum will take this task seriously and go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Gregory. In all your behalf and on Namaskar, in all your behalf and on my behalf, I wish all the best to our friend Vinay Srivastava. Let him get well. Let him get well. And
Misra he's been sending messages. Talk about the vibrancy of anthropology.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Given to me, this is not a part of the proceeding. Given to me, I would have loved to see all of you in person rather than through virtual medium.
You have to invite us to US.
Then you have to send tickets, sir. So
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gregory. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Very nice to see you.
Yeah.
Mitashi here.
Mitashi, ma'am.
After long.
Namaskar.
Namaskar, sir.
Professor Gregory, this proceedings is very important. So may I request you to, prepare the proceeding in consultation with Professor K.K. Misra, and it should be ready for circulation within next 5-7 days. Is it possible?
Heavily loaded. Heavily loaded.
You will be sending the recording.
Yeah, I will send the recording. That is there.
Yeah, that's what I think most people
And
are.
you have not thanked. I shall fail in my duty if I don't thank my technical staff, especially Engineer Subrat Kara and Engineer Atul Nak, and also another our Chandra Panda. So I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the three technical staff.
No, they managed it very well.
Yeah, who helped us to have this.
But now at one point of time, it was a pack, like all 100 participants. Now it has come down to 40. So it is time for winding up.
Professor Misra, it was also available live Facebook, streaming.
Yes.
I don't know how many participated there. So the number would be always more than 100.
As I see my screen, must be. But as I see,
People have not been able to connect. So they are all requesting for a recording to be put up. There are many messages.
So I will let you know the Facebook figure, how many attended this symposium. I think that must be also 100. And
yes,
more, but there were some issues about some people not being able to get.
But Deepak Babu, there is one thing from my experience. I am saying that if I relate anthropology products from Hyderabad University, this crisis so far, so far is not there. For example, Amitav, who spoke, Amitav is now a professor at Indian Institute of Forest Management. Our students are in every field, literally, in business, in research, in pharmaceuticals, in many other industries. So therefore, we never had a crisis as far as Hyderabad students are concerned.
I think Punjab University that they have diversified. They've gone into like aerospace designing. Some of our students who did design research. So I don't really know what the crisis was about, except that we have to find out.
Yeah, yes.
The reasons why some of them are lagging behind.
Okay, the number
All
is...
right, friends. All right,
yeah.
friends. Thank you so much. Good seeing all of you.
Yeah.
And
bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
चालू करो.
Yeah.